Hi, my name is Sarah Pearman. Our paper is called It's a Scavenger Hunt, Usability of Websites Opt-out and Data Deletion Choices. I'm presenting on behalf of the lead author of this paper, Hana Habib, and our co-authors Jiamin Wang, Yixin Zhao, Alessandro Acquisti, Lorrie Cranor, Norman Sadeh, and Florian Schaub. Our focus in this work is privacy choices on the internet. These privacy choices are increasingly regulated worldwide. So this includes GDPR in the European Union. We also have acts such as CAN-SPAM for email advertising opt-outs and COPPA for children's privacy in the United States. We're also beginning to see examples in individual states in the US, such as the California Consumer Privacy Act. And groups such as the Digital Advertising Alliance also work towards self-regulation in the advertising industry. The three types of commonly mandated privacy choices that we will be examining here are opt-outs for email communication, opt-outs for targeted advertising, and mechanisms for data deletion. Past research has indicated that privacy choices are problematic for users. However, these studies were conducted as either large-scale machine learning-driven analyses or small-scale user studies based on a limited set of tools or websites. We seek to expand on existing work here by testing privacy choices on websites rather than in external tools like browser extensions with real users in the lab. So to give you an example of the type of privacy choice that we're talking about, let's take the example of opting out of advertising emails from Amazon. And let's look at how many clicks that takes. To give you a hint, it's a lot. So first you'd have to find the account settings from the main homepage, from all of this long list of options. Then you have to navigate to the correct option from this list. So you'd have to find communication and content, and then you have to determine, is it the email subscription section I need? Is it communication preferences? It turns out it's communication preferences. Then you have to find the promotional email section within that. Then you'll have to scroll past 90 or so checkboxes. And you might think, do I really have to uncheck all of these to unsubscribe from all of these categories? If you get all the way to the bottom, you'll realize there's actually one checkbox that lets you opt out of all the categories. So then you can click that. Hopefully you haven't wasted too much time individually unchecking the others. Then you click update, and then you finally accomplish this task. So in our group's prior work, we analyzed privacy choices like that Amazon example across 150 websites. We observed common sets of practices, and in this study, we wanted to evaluate those practices in the lab with real users. We conducted an in-lab usability study of common practices that are used to offer the three types of privacy choices that I previously mentioned. So those are email opt-outs, targeted advertising opt-outs, and data deletion choices. Each study session that we conducted had three portions. The first was a pre-task interview, then a pair of study tasks, and then a post-task interview. In the pre-task interview, we wanted to understand what users already knew and already believed about privacy controls. So we asked them about their experiences and beliefs surrounding data collection on websites, controls that they were aware of for making choices about how companies could use their data, and their awareness of and experiences with controls specific to email marketing, targeted advertising, and data deletion. So for our study tasks, we identified a set of 9 websites that used the practices that we intended to study. We gave users scenarios, and we asked them to complete certain tasks as they would if they were in that scenario in the real world. To introduce email opt-out tasks, we asked participants to imagine that they had received the 10th update email from a site that day and wanted to stop receiving those emails. For targeted advertising, we asked them to imagine that they had been seeing ads on a website for a pair of shoes that they searched for last month, and now they wanted to stop seeing those ads. And for the data deletion scenario, we asked them to imagine that they were uncomfortable with a website keeping a record of their location and wanted to remove all of their data from the company's databases. So for some of the websites, this scenario would require visiting the account settings or the privacy policy, which were the common practices that we had observed in our previous work. The policy mechanisms could appear as links or could be described in text instructions. Each participant completed 2 different tasks. To minimize learning effects and prevent fatigue, we counterbalanced and stratified the task assignments. We also asked interview questions after each task, as well as at the end of the study session. After each task, we asked participants about their experience and their understanding of what they had just done. We also asked whether they had ever done something similar before or had ever visited that specific website. After both of the tasks were completed, we asked users to compare the 2. For example, was one easier than the other and why? We also asked what type of controls they wished websites offered related to their data. So before we get into the findings, let's talk about who the participants were. To give you a brief summary of demographics, in terms of gender, about half of the participants identified as women and about half as men. The most common age range was 25 to 34, but participants were a wide range of ages. Our 24 participants were mostly highly educated, but only 25% reported technical expertise, so most were non-experts. So what did we find? We'll talk about the results in terms of the user action framework, which describes the user experience in terms of planning, translation, physical action, and assessment. Here, we can break that down in terms of finding privacy choices, learning privacy choices, using privacy choices, and understanding those choices. First, we'll talk about planning or finding the privacy choices. Users' expectations and strategies for finding choices depended on the type of choice. For email opt-outs, users expected to find unsubscribe links within marketing emails. That may be because of the CAN-SPAM Act that has standardized where those unsubscribe links tend to appear. For advertising opt-outs, user expectations varied and there was no dominant mechanism. But some of the ways that users expected to be able to opt out of targeted advertising included browser plugins, browser settings, and privacy protective search engines. For deletion choices, they expected to find them in the user account settings on a website. When there were multiple paths to a choice, it tended to be easier to find. In this example, most participants who were assigned a data deletion task on RuneScape.com found the information through searching the website's support pages rather than referring to the privacy policy. This led them to the personal data rights page, where they were able to see that the website offered this, although that's where the interaction sometimes broke down, as this box at the bottom seemed clickable when it actually was not. But this page does also contain a link to the privacy policy. Next, we can talk about translation or learning privacy choices. Formatting and text sometimes caused confusion for users trying to learn what privacy choices meant. So here's an example of a privacy policy that users encountered on one of the websites in the study when they were trying to opt out of ads for the shoes that they had previously searched for in one of our scenarios. So there is some relevant information here about how ad partners use cookies and beacons to decide which ads to show. However, the first link here is actually for opting out of Google Analytics, and participants often clicked that first when they were actually trying to disable cookies. This link isn't useful if the main goal is to disable cookies, so it's not clear why it's shown first here. The link they would have actually wanted to click is below that Google Analytics link. Next, we can talk about physical action or using privacy choices. One major result is that using the privacy choices in this study required high numbers of user actions. That could include clicks, hovers, scrolls, filling out form fields, or other types of interaction. We see here, for example, that on average, a participant took about 38 actions to exercise a privacy choice using a policy link. This average includes the reality that most users do make some mistakes. They navigate to the wrong page, they click the wrong item, and so forth as they're finding the actual choice that they want. But one of the co-authors of this paper also collected data about the shortest path to each choice by performing these tasks with prior knowledge of the location of the choices. And even then, If a user already knew the shortest route possible to get to a choice through a policy link, it would still take about 22 actions. Some choices also required unnecessary effort. Sometimes websites required long forms or written requests to complete actions such as data deletion, when it really should have been possible to do that through a simple web form. The example shown here is the form for deleting or updating data on the New York Times website. Most participants disliked the number of similar seeming options here. They disliked that you had to select from a list of 22 different New York Times services, and they disliked that you could only submit one request type at a time. There were also participants who ended up writing emails to customer service when they couldn't find the necessary option on the website, like this participant who ended up writing an email to ask how to stop seeing ads from a particular company. Sometimes websites also required users to choose among multiple links. For example, this website's privacy policy had a fairly clear section title for how to opt out of remarketing and advertising, but underneath that title, users would tend to have a difficult time understanding which of these 3 links would allow them to complete their desired task. Next, we can talk about assessment, or how users understand the privacy choices that they've executed. Overall, many users were skeptical about the effectiveness of privacy choices. One said it's like the door open close on the elevator. It's just there to make you feel like you have some power, but I really don't think it does anything. Another said, I think that I could go through the motions of deleting the information, but I feel like it might still be there even if I tried to delete it. So how do we improve these choices, both so that users can find and perform these choices, and so that they trust that the choices actually do what they would expect? One way to improve these choices would be to provide unified settings. This could simply mean matching user expectations by always having the privacy choices easily accessible within the website's account settings, rather than buried somewhere else on the website or in its privacy policy. There's also the possibility of further unifying choices for users by offering more universal mechanisms, like a web browser that's able to parse privacy policies or use machine-readable privacy policies to help users exercise preferences across multiple sites with lower effort. Some of our group's recent research in the context of CCPA has also explored unified visual standards to help users find privacy options on websites. Here we have a mock-up of a privacy options button that we've tested that is designed to convey the idea of choice and to serve as a central location for all privacy-related choices. Ideally, this might also lead to a dashboard that could interface with automated tools to allow users to control privacy settings across multiple sites. It may also help to provide additional paths to choices. For example, a privacy policy may be easier to find if there are multiple routes to it on the website. On the New York Times website, for example, the privacy policy was not linked in just one location on the homepage, but was also accessible through the privacy settings, which is how some participants found it. Additional paths might also mean more inline controls, such as the ad controls that are available directly from individual ads in the Facebook newsfeed. To further encourage improved usability, regulations should have explicit usability requirements that dictate parameters such as the location of controls and the way that controls are presented. Our findings suggest that the CAN-SPAM Act has likely been effective in making email unsubscribing more usable. It mandates the look and placement of email opt-out links in commercial emails, and users thus expect to find the unsubscribe link in that location. So it may be helpful to have more regulations in the style of that act. So overall, we conducted a 24-participant in-lab usability evaluation of email opt-out controls, targeted advertising controls, and data deletion mechanisms. We found that the location and functionality of choices could be better aligned to user expectations. We find that interface changes, such as unified privacy settings and multiple paths to those settings, could help users. And standardization of choices via regulation may help to improve usability. Thank you.